was around 16 years old, my friends and I were really into scaring each other. They would bring up urban legends and folklore, and we were always trying to find ways to live on the edge. Whether it was telling scary stories, or trying to find the spookiest movie to watch, we were always up to something to try and scare ourselves. My one friend mentioned the classic tale of Bloody Mary, and by chanting her name into a mirror she would appear. Thinking it was a fun idea, I told them they should come over and try it out when school ended. It was Friday. I came home from school that day and my parents mentioned that they were going out on a date and wouldn't be back until Saturday. I asked them about having friends over that night, and they said it would be fine. It was perfect. We were able to try this out without having my parents being there. My parents left for their date, and my friends came over that night. We watched Ghost Ship and a few other movies before braving up the courage to attempt the chant. It was almost 12 a.m. We had just finished up the movie The Thing, and decided to go into my bedroom. I had this really long mirror that had a really cool frame. It was perfect for this chant. My friends all looked nervous, but they were excited to be there for it. I lit some candles, turned off the lights, and stood in front of the mirror, while my friends stood away from me. The only reflection I could see was me in my bedroom window. I took a deep breath and looked into the mirror and started the chant, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary. I kept chanting her name with the hopes of seeing her. I looked at my friends and said nothing is happening. My friends laughed about it and said it's just folklore and to not get my hopes up. I disregarded their remarks, looked back in the mirror and continued to chant her name. As I do so, I look into the mirror and notice that the window is fully open. It was only cracked prior to us entering the room. I figured my friends were just messing around with me and opened it up to add to the scare effect. I continued to chant Mary's name until I saw it. I look into the reflection of the mirror to see a man with a rabbit mask peer through the window. My face went from being slightly nervous to being absolutely terrified. My friends were all laughing at my reaction until I screamed and my friends looked over. The man looked at us and said, "You girls shouldn't play with spirits." He tried to climb in through the window as I ran over and closed it down on his hands. I looked and he was gone. The front door to the house started to knock. Then it went from knocking to banging. My friend starts to cry as she grabs her cell phone to dial 911. I run up to the front door to make sure it was locked. I look through the peephole in the door to see the rabbit staring at me. He whispers, "You're all going to die tonight." I tell him that the police were on their way. He says, "You think I'm scared of the police? You'll all be dead before they get here." The banging continues and it gets louder and louder. My friends rush in the room and scream as they see the silhouette of the man in the living room window. He starts to tap on it and pulls out a knife. I start to freak out, and my nerves were shattered. I yell to him to leave us alone. He laughs and says, "No, I'm good." My one friend goes from screaming at the top of her lungs to laughing like a psychopath. The man runs back up to the front door, and my friend says, "Chill, Chloe." My friend unlocks the door where the man is standing there with his back turned to the door. He removes his mask and turns around. I looked at his face and went from scared to angry to see our friend Daniel smiling at us. He said, "Gotcha." I punched him in the shoulder. My friends all laughed and my one friend who was crying mentioned that they were all in on it. They wanted to find the best way to scare me, and they succeeded in doing so. Daniel said, "I'm sorry, Chloe. I had to." I was irritated for a bit, but then laughed it off as we all continued to hang out. My friend who called the police actually faked the phone call completely. We ended the night watching the movie Scream. It was a night and prank I'll never forget. My parents took a Saturday off to go check out some yard sales in the next town over. My mom was on the hunt for a grandfather clock, because growing up she always had them and wanted one for our house. They came home later that day, and sure enough they were carrying one in. My mom was really excited as she reminisced about her childhood and was glad to finally have one. She mentioned that she got it for practically nothing, and said the seller was insistent about them taking it. They stood the clock up next to the wall in the living room, tuned it, and let the pendulum swing. It was beautiful and well maintained for how old it was. It had a really neat design on the front of it with the sun and moon detailed to match each time of the day. Later that night, my parents went up to their room to get some sleep. While I was grabbing a glass of water before heading to bed, I walked up to the clock, looking at it once more and admiring its beauty. I opened up the door to the case where the pendulum was located and looked inside. A small notepad that looked like it was poorly painted to match the color of the clock and was taped to the ceiling of the pendulum case. Curious as any 15-year-old kid, I removed the notepad from the clock and took a look at it. On the front of it, it said, "My Legacy." I decided to open it up, where I found writings from a previous owner. There were some small stains on the inside of it that almost looked like dried up blood. I started to read. The first page read, September 23rd, 1983. Hello, my name is Samuel. Some would refer to me as a serial killer, but I refer to myself as an artist. I've taken the lives of 33 beautiful women without an ounce of evidence to show of who I am. The police know nothing of me, and I'm a shadow amongst the rest of society. You may be asking me why I'm writing this. The answer is, I want to be known. I want the world to know who I am and what I'm capable of, the power I hold in the palm of my hand. Just you wait. They'll be making movies about me. I'll become a household name in history and people will fear. I will be famous. I am the Binghamton Butcher. Until we meet again, Sam. I continued to read more through the pages. This Samuel wrote in explicit detail who he killed and how he killed them, and my stomach started to churn. I decided to try and find the last entry, so I flipped to the last page that had writing on it, and I started to read it. September 23rd, 1993. Hello again. Killing people has always been an easy experience for me. Choking the life from someone brought me euphoria that I really can't explain, but today I took it too far. I just killed my wife and daughter. It seems as if this power has taken over me more than I could have hoped. I don't know what to do, where to go, or how to live anymore. I finally feel real pain for the first time. I am no longer a monster, but a mere human. I think the best course of action is to end it. If someone is reading this, then I'm already dead. If anyone asks why I did what I did, it's because I could. Long live the Binghamton Butcher. To hell I must return. Sam. I closed the journal and got into my bed. I was up for a little bit thinking about that journal and finally managed to fall asleep. The next day I went downstairs where my parents were sitting at the dining room table eating breakfast. I told them about my discovery and showed them the journal. They both freaked out, got in the car and drove to the location where they picked up the clock to talk to the seller. The seller was shocked, showed a mournful expression as they mentioned it was their uncle's journal. The incident was thought to be a home invasion that went wrong and that the invaders had murdered the family. They were trying to get rid of the clock because it brought sorrow into their life having it in their home. Sam was a classic case of they're more than what meets the eye. My parents decided to get rid of the clock and found one to replace it. I'll never forget that clock and what dark history haunted it. The Binghamton Butcher. People aren't always who they seem to be. Thank you so much for being here and taking time out of your day to check this video out. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing to know when new videos release in the near future. I hope you're all well and staying safe. Thanks again, and I'll see you soon.